Let me talk for a moment about what's happening in 2024. When I first took over this assignment and I was elected by my peers in the old Senate chamber there shortly after the 2022 election, which was a great disappointment for so many of us. I think if we'd have taken a poll in this room in October of 2022, and I would ask you how many Republican senators do you think we're going to have in January of 23, odds are the range would have been on the very pessimistic end, 50, and on the more optimistic side, maybe 52 or 53. But I don't think any of us would have predicted 49. We actually lost ground. We took that 50-50 Senate and actually went reverse by a seat. Spent a lot of time looking at that, analyzing what happened with independent voters. Independent voters decide elections. Seeing what we need to do here in terms of changes going forward here into 24. Now, it's always easier to be a Monday morning quarterback. Of course, in politics, you can get a lot of criticisms when you don't win elections. But I tell you, we spent a lot of time quantitatively looking at what happened in 22. Why did independent voters go actually towards the Democrats in a year when Biden was very unpopular? The Democrats were on their heels on the issue set that were in our wheelhouse. And yet, instead of going R plus 10 to 15, which is typically what midterms have done with Democrats in the White House, look back 2010 with Obama and 14 as well. 14, I know that. This year got elected United States Senate, but 2010 was a Tea Party wave. 2 Democrat White House midterms, big nights for Republicans. It was shaping up in terms of atmosphere with, we thought, would be parallels what happened with Barack Obama in 10 and 14 with Biden's midterm in 22. And instead of independents going R plus 10, which is, they went R plus 12 and R plus 19 in the 10 and 14 elections, it went D plus 2. It was not a problem with a red wave. The red wave showed up. Republican voters turned out in 22. The issue is independent voters who most of the time decide elections, those who fall between the two 45-yard lines. So the good news is we have the best map in a decade. It's a chance for us to pick up the United States Senate. We're halfway through, believe it or not, more than halfway through this cycle, and we're already halfway to getting the majority. We need 2 seats to win the majority. We're halfway there with Joe Manchin's retirement in West Virginia. I'm generally one who's a conservative forecaster, having spent time, as Gina mentioned, with publicly traded companies. That company, that software business we had in Montana, we took that company public and then were bought by Oracle. But I spent a lot of time forecasting numbers for the street. And you're better off to forecast a little bit in the low side and beat it than to be irrationally exuberant. I'm just trying to be objective here and looking at this map. The good news, it's the best map in 10 years. The challenges are you can't fall in love with this map because we're running against some very strong incumbent Democrat senators that know how to win in red states. So this is going to be a record-breaking type of year. We'll see elections, Senate elections, hit all-time record spending levels in various states. When I ran against Steve Bullock in 2020 in my re-elect, that Montana Senate race turned out to be a $210 million race. In fact, it was 4 years ago, almost to the day, Chuck Schumer flew into Montana and recruited Steve Bullock to run against me because the filing deadline is the second week of March. And Bullock got in the race. He never lost. His net phase were plus 25. Very popular Democrat sitting governor. Schumer got him in the race. Good on Chuck Schumer to do that. And we were, according to Charlie Cook, a lean Dem seat all the way to election day. A $200 million race in Montana is the same thing as a $4 billion race in Florida, by the way. If you look at 1 million people in Montana, 20 million in Florida. If I told Marco Rubio, how was your $4 billion race? He'd say, oh my word, that's what we had in Montana at $200 million. We ended up winning 55-45. And showed that, what it takes to try to minimize saying stupid things as a candidate, which I'm capable of doing. So we ran a great campaign, executed well, had a ground game that was second to none, and surprised a lot of people with their victory. I think my colleague said, Steve, this is an important cycle. You've been in an enterprise race. Would you do this for the 24 election cycle, and we're very glad to be doing this. And again, we're halfway through it. We're halfway majority with West Virginia now. By the way, that wasn't by accident. As we started our strategy of what we can do better in 24, we started with finding candidates that could not just win primaries, but also win general elections. As Leader McConnell says, winners make policy and losers go home. We want to have people who can actually win in general elections and can appeal to that independent middle of the spectrum, which is where elections are won and lost. So we focused a lot on candidate quality and recruitment. We started off in West Virginia. Right after the election was over in November of 22, I remember I was on the phone with Governor Jim Justice in West Virginia. And I can't do a real good Jim Justice impression, but I will tell you, he took it very seriously. I said, Jim, you get in that race, you're going to win West Virginia. And that alone, with a Republican vice president, just gave us the majority. He said, Steve, I haven't thought about that. So, so Leader McConnell, full court press, meeting with Jim Justice. Many of my other colleagues involved in that recruiting effort. It's team ball. We got him in the race. And then you add one other very important dynamic in American politics today, and that's an endorsement of President Trump. When President Trump endorsed Jim Justice in October, and we've been working now with the president for many, many months, as we're working closely with the Trump team to be on the same page, because the most important thing, as I've told President Trump, the most important thing that you need is a Republican majority in the U.S. And imagine for a moment a new president having to call Chuck Schumer, if you're a Republican president, to move through your cabinet nominees, for starters. So very important. We've got certainly the cooperation and the help working with Trump and President Trump and his political team. We got the mansion. We got the Justice endorsement in the middle of October. Justice was showing numbers beating the mansion by 15 to 20 points. And then we got the news that Joe was going to retire. I work closely with Joe Manchin. Joe's been a great ally in many important legislative victories we've had. But I will tell you, when it comes down to who you're going to vote for majority leader, he's voting for Chuck Schumer. And that's why it's an important race for us, which we got that one. So there's one. We expand the map beyond West Virginia, because we started off with an 8-state focus. Now we're down to 7 states. One thing that Procter & Gamble taught me was the power of focus. What the difference the Grand Canyon makes versus the Florida swamp. So as you focus that power, that energy, you get better results. So the focus on these 7 states. We'll go to Montana. We've got a great recruit there, Tim Sheehy. He's a Navy SEAL, 100 combat missions, Naval Academy graduate. His wife is also a Naval Academy graduate, a Marine. They were married while they were both serving in Afghanistan by a judge in Kalispell, Montana, because Montana is the only state that allows a double proxy wedding. Go figure. There's true love right there, sweetheart. We're getting married again. It's amazing. They have 4 children. He's a businessman, and he's running as a younger guy who's got a lot of runway in life, depending on where he goes, even after the Senate. This is a guy that could do a lot of things. And anyway, so Tim's in that race. Montana has the 2nd highest per capita veteran population in America, so it kind of fits where we're at as far as voter appeal and so forth, against a very formidable challenger in John Tester. They're spending $1 million a week right now in Montana.
Wow.
On the Senate race alone. Primarily beating up Tim Sheehy and trying to prop up John Tester. They started doing that, by the way, in early November. When I was home for Thanksgiving, I thought it was October of 24. If you're trying to, you got grandkids, you want to maybe get a football game on, and you try to get through all the TV commercials, you maybe want to show somebody a cool video, owning the digital side, it's game on already in Montana. So if you think $210 million was a lot in Montana in 2020, get ready for at least $250 million, if not more, being spent in that Montana Senate race alone, because we know you win Montana, you win the United States Senate. Next race, Ohio. By the way, we have 3 red states in this cycle that they have to defend, Democrats have to defend their seats. That's West Virginia, Montana, and Ohio. Quite red states. The next time we have another red state with a Democrat up for re-election is 2030. There's 0 up in 26. There's 0 up in 28. There's 3 up in 24. So this is kind of a pay it forward moment to get it done. And you have a little bit of tailwind, at least in terms of general mood and voter leanings in these red states. We picked up West Virginia. Montana is going to be very competitive. It's a state that Trump won by 20 points in 16, and by 16 points in 20. And every single statewide official in Montana is now a Republican, except for John Tester. Every single statewide official in West Virginia is a Republican, except for Joe Manchin. And that leads me to the third state, is Ohio. Every single statewide elected official in Ohio is a Republican, except for Sherrod Brown. We've got a primary there. The NRSC is staying neutral in Ohio. We spent some work ahead of the filing deadlines to keep a couple of candidates who we believe unelectable in the general out of that race. But we think that Matt Dolan, Bernie Moreno, Frank LaRose are all capable of beating Sherrod Brown. We'll have a primary. It settles the score in March, and we'll be off to the general election. So stay tuned in Ohio. Then moving out to the west, we'll talk about Nevada and Arizona. Nevada is a state that we won the governor's race in 22, and that same disappointing night when Adam Laxalt lost by 8,000 votes. That's 4 votes per precinct. If you think about Nevada, it's a great big red state with this big blue ball at the bottom of it called Clark County, Las Vegas. Las Vegas is where the Democrat votes are. The rest of the state's very red. The key for Republican to win Nevada is focus on Clark County, focus on Las Vegas, focus on the culinary union members. I had endorsements from unions in Montana. I had 3 Indian tribes endorse me in Montana in my race. That's unheard of for Republicans. As Arthur Brooks has said, go to where you're not invited. And as Republicans, we are invited there. It's just we choose not to accept the invitation. And so expand the battlefield. Get out there with those culinary workers who right now are battling the effects of Joe Biden's 70% rise in prices since he took office, and gasoline and geopolitics and the out-of-control border. I mean, this is like served up here that we can appeal to the working class in our country. We've got Sam Brown in that race. He's a West Point graduate, severely wounded by an IED in Afghanistan. He was literally wrapped up like a mummy with burns over 80% of his body, shipped to the San Antonio Burn Center. And there was this sweet dietitian named Amy, through a feeding tube, bringing Sam Brown nutrition and life. And they met each other. Their first date was a rodeo in Texas. And they are now Captain Sam and Captain Amy Brown, married and with children. Great American story. That race is looking good right now in Nevada. And on a night with Laxalt lost, Joe Lombardo was elected Republican governor in 22 of Nevada. So Lombardo is working with the Brown team, and I think you learn some lessons when you lose a close one like they did in 22. And I like where we're at in Nevada. But it's going to be a big race, but Sam's the right guy to win that race. Going over to Arizona, we've got, I think in some ways, one of the most talented orators and politicians we have in Kari Lake, news broadcast and so forth. And Kari knows the key to winning in Arizona is focusing on the future, focus on the issues her constituents care most about, which will be the border, inflation, crime, what's going on in geopolitics. There's a number of things there that served up to us from an issue set viewpoint, and not focus on grievances from the past. You pivot, you talk about the future. That race is going to be very, very competitive. There have been 5 polls in Arizona that you've seen publicly. If you see, every one of them shows the following. It shows Lake and Gallego neck and neck. 3 polls have Lake ahead, 2 polls have Gallego ahead, but both around 40 to 45%. And Kyrsten Sinema around 15 to 18%. So that we don't see a path for Kyrsten Sinema. As much as we work with her in the Senate, she's been helpful on a number of issues that we've worked trying to find paths for the United States Senate. We don't see a path forward for her to win re-election in Arizona. She's now facing deadlines. She's got an April filing deadline. She's got to go get signatures to be on the ballot as an independent, and I think running out of time. So I wouldn't be surprised if she announced her retirement like Joe Manchin did, but I don't know for sure. I really don't. But she's running out of time. But probably more importantly, from a political calculus viewpoint, I don't think she can win Arizona. That's going to be a Gallego-like race, and I think that's going to be a very competitive race on the map. We move out to the Northeast. In the Middle America, we'll start with Pennsylvania. Many of you know Dave McCormick. He's one of our top recruits coming into this cycle. We had him down at the Breakers a year ago, kind of teasing that and trying to get Dave and Dina maybe to do this again. If you remember, he narrowly lost to Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania. It's not lost on us that Pennsylvania is a tough state. Let me tell you something. Dave McCormick is the guy that could win Pennsylvania. He's running his campaign. It reminds me of a Procter & Gamble brand launch. I mean, it's just an enterprise type of operation in terms of his fundraising, his branding, what he's doing here in terms of operations as former CEO of Bridgewater. So we love the fact Dave's in that race. He's cleared the primary. We were able to keep any possible primary challenges that would have upset that calculus to win Pennsylvania. And it looks like we've done that. In fact, the chairman of the Republican Party, Lawrence Tabus, who I had lunch twice with in Pennsylvania, working an endorsement. He said, we've never done an endorsement for a Senate candidate. I said, I know, but we need to do it this time. And they did it. It was in September in Harrisburg. We flew Bill Haggerty and John Barrasso into Harrisburg. And you might want to know, why would a Wyoming guy like John Barrasso go to Harrisburg? He actually grew up, he's the son of Pennsylvania, going way back. And so we flew those two guys in. They convinced the Republicans at that state convention to endorse Dave McCormick. We're off the races. So we like where we're at in Pennsylvania. Polls just came out in the last 48 hours, show that race very competitive. So hang on in Pennsylvania, we'll see what happens. Next, we're going to go to Michigan. Many of you know Mike Rogers. Mike's somebody we're excited about in the race. That's who we're behind. By the way, we're not afraid, the NRSC, this cycle, to get in behind candidates that can win. I don't always make friends that way, but it depends on which friends you want to have, I guess, sometimes. So, but we are behind Mike Rogers in Michigan. Of course, 12 years here in the House, served as chairman of the Intelligence Committee here. If you want to talk about somebody who can come in cold and talk issue sets and so forth, minimize unforced errors as a candidate, it's Mike Rogers. The guy is he's a very seasoned candidate who knows how to win in purple districts, as he's had in the past, and he'll put Michigan play. That's an open seat. Open seats are a lot easier to win than incumbents. So keep an eye on Michigan, and Mike Rogers, he's got a primary, he's got to get through, but Mike we think would be the best guy to win Michigan. One more state, Wisconsin. We'll have a candidate most likely announcing there in February. Spent a lot of time getting ready. That's Eric Hovde. I can't say he's going to announce yet because that violates FEC rules, but he's looking at it very seriously. And he's working with the campaign teams. He ran against Tommy Thompson back in 2012, lost by 3 points, focused on the private sector for most of his career, has some resources to provide to that race, and he will be likely our nominee there in Wisconsin. There's one more developing race that I want you to keep an eye on. You might have heard the news. We're thrilled that Nella Domenici got in the race in New Mexico. That kind of upset the apple cart. I've heard stories already, insider baseball of Schumer being quite shocked and concerned that where'd that come from. We've been working with Nella for quite some time. It's a credit to many who worked with her. She spent a lot of time talking to our team, showing her a path to win. And Nella is very seasoned, bright business leader. And she worked with Dave McCormick at Bridgewater once upon a time, and Dave McCormick was really helpful in getting Nella to get in that race too. So it's a great name in New Mexico, and she's a force of her own. I'm sure somebody gets to know her as well. She's just an amazing businesswoman and great leader. So that's the break. There's a few more races. We've got a few things up our sleeve. We'll see what happens. No promises yet, but we're not done recruiting in some other key states. But have no news to break there here this morning. So I know you want to leave some time for some questions, Jim. If I might just kind of close on what's at stake in 24. I don't think it's lost on anybody in this room what's at stake. But let me just point maybe 2 facts you may not have thought about. Number 1, Kamala Harris has broken more ties than any vice president in our nation's history. Let me say that again. Kamala Harris has broken more ties than any vice president. We've had 47 in our nation's history. She just surpassed John Adams and John Calhoun. And they both served 8-year terms. when you lose these close votes, you look at the 33 tie-breaking votes that she has cast. There's about, just off the top, besides all some of the very difficult and far-left judges that we're not able to stop, but about $3 trillion of spending in taxes. Because that big $1.9 trillion stimulus bill that we did not, we had $1 trillion of unspent dollars sitting in December of 22. We didn't need to throw another 1.9 trillion, as Lawrence Summers says, inflationary creating stimulus spending, not to mention deficit creating spending, and then additional couple trillion on the subsequent Inflation Reduction Act bill. Here we are with $3 trillion that we're not able to stop. If you think about how expensive political races are, it's very expensive to win anymore. It's a whole lot more expensive to lose. Just look at what's happening here in Washington. Second, it's most likely Sinema and Manchin are not coming back to the United States Senate. Manchin for sure, and I think Sinema, highly likely she does not come back in January 25. Those were the two Democrats that saved the filibuster. I was having a conversation with Joe Manchin with this on the floor before Christmas. He alluded to that fact because the filibuster is probably gone if we don't get the majority back. That's a sobering thought around what would happen, because DC statehood is teed up if they have the House. It's teed up. They've passed it over on this side here a couple of times. The federal takeover elections is teed up. That's one of their high priorities. Adding 4 more justices to the Supreme Court is teed up. So it's not just laws they put in place that maybe we can undo someday with a change in majorities, but it's doing irreparable harm and restructuring and power in this country. It would be very difficult to ever get it back. Brian Kemp puts in voter ID requirements in Georgia, which was a good on Brian Kemp in the Georgia legislature. The federal election takeover would say that disenfranchises minorities, and states can't do things like put voter ID requirements. You can imagine where this all goes if the federal government usurps the powers of the states. So that is what's at stake as well here for 24, and why now, just 8 months away from early voting in Pennsylvania, it is game on now. So I hope this was helpful to kind of frame what's going on in the Senate. We're optimistic, but it's going to be a war between now and November, and I want to thank many of you who are helping us in that great cause. So I'll stop there, Jim, and then take some questions.
Fantastic. Very good.